Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to head back to the Netherlands for the first time in what seems like a little while actually, but we're going to have a look at another Trappist beer for you today, and for this one we're going to visit the younger of the two Trappist breweries. The older one of course is Brouwerij de Kievet, whose beers are known as Le Trapp. For this one though we are going to go to Trappisten Brouwerij de Kievet, whose beers are known as Zundert. You'll find these guys just a little bit to the southwest of Breda, in the southern part of the Netherlands, near Brabant if I remember correctly. But for this review we're having a little look at the newest beer in their range. This is the Zundert 10 and it comes in at 10% ABV and it is an Abdij Belgian style quadruple, I guess you could say. One of my favourite styles of Belgian beer, but obviously since we're talking about the Netherlands we have to be a little bit careful in using the word Belgian here. So really curious to see how this beer turns out. Cool to return to this brewery again. I think it's been about 3 or 4 years at least since I reviewed the first Zundert beer, which is now known as the Zundert 8. And interestingly, that beer is also a dark beer actually. I would have thought for their second beer that they were going to introduce, they would have done like a tripel or something like this. But not complaining, I do enjoy a good quadruple, and hopefully we see some more beers from this brewery at some point in the future as well. It probably takes them a few years to do the recipe development and things like this too. So yeah, curious to see how this one turns out. Since this is a Dutch beer as well, a massive shout out to the guys at the Dutch Beer Collective. There's 4 beer tubers down in the Netherlands now. This is Beeromaniac, who I just discovered recently actually, Thomas Opent, who I've spoken to for quite a little while, and also Dutch Beer Geek and Beer Geek Holland. All 4 of these guys are doing some very nice Dutch beer reviews. Mainly their videos are still in Dutch, and as a Swedish speaker now it's quite interesting to watch them because you can understand a hell of a lot of what they're saying. It's really strange, but they do some nice videos. They do some videos in English as well, and I think that's a good thing for them too, to introduce the world to Dutch craft beer, because the Netherlands has some really awesome breweries, but because they're kind of sandwiched between Germany and Belgium, 2 traditional beer countries, I think they don't quite get the recognition that they deserve. But I'll put the link to the Dutch Beer Collective in the description below and you can go and check out all 4 of these guys. Very nice guys from what I've seen of them so far, and hopefully I can go down there and join them for a beer festival at some point. They have invited me down, but I need to see how things work out with baby and stuff like this now, so we'll see how that goes. But yeah, make sure you check them out, and we'll talk about the history of the brewery and the Abbey now. So yeah, as always, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery and the Abbey before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that hopefully I can do in the future from Trappisten Brouwerij de Kievet and the Zundert beers. There is one there already, and hopefully they produce more beers in the future. There's all the usual social media down there also. If you want to see more beer reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel has a geography based tagging system, so you can go into the home page and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Dutch beers that I've reviewed for you, and I will need to make one for the Trappist beers as well. I think that would be a good addition to the channel. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is massively appreciated. And like I say, do check out the Dutch Beer Collective guys as well. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then, to tell you a little bit about the Trappisten Brouwerij de Kievet. So as I told you already, this brewery is one of the newest officially licensed Trappist breweries, and it was recognised as such back in 2013. And in total there are now 12 officially recognised Trappist breweries. This is 6 in Belgium, 2 in the Netherlands, 1 in Austria, 1 in America, 1 in Italy, and also 1 in England as well. So I'm going to have a little challenge now and see if I can actually remember these offhand, and this isn't in the notes that I have here. So the 6 breweries in Belgium, you have Westmalle, West-Vleteren, Rochefort, Chimay, Orval and Achel. So I think that's the 6 Belgian ones. In the Netherlands you have De Koningshoven, Le Trapp, and you have Zundert. In Italy I think it's Drefontainen they're called, or Trefontaine. 3 fountains basically. In America it's Spencer, and in Austria they're called, is it Engelstift or Egelstift? one of the two. And then in England, of course, they're the newest one. It is called Tint Meadow. But there is an abbey in Spain, from what I understand, who are looking to get licensed, and I think another one over in America are looking at it too. I know Sierra Nevada are doing some collaborations with an abbey to start up some Trappist brewing too. So it'll be interesting to see if those two do get their license. And there used to be a Trappist abbey in Germany as well, but I think quite recently it's been sold on, from what I understand. It's a shame there isn't a German Trappist beer. That would be quite interesting. But yeah, those are your 12 Trappist brews. But anyway, back to the notes to tell you a little bit about the Zundert beer then. So the Zundert Trappist beer, as I've mentioned to you before, is brewed at the Abbey Mary Refuge, which is also known as Maria Toevlucht, which is in Zundert, in an area known as De Moren. And you'll find Zundert just a little bit to the southwest of Breda, very close to the Dutch-Belgian border in Noord-Brabant province. It's a small town of only about 7,700 people, and probably the nearest big city actually, other than Breda, is Antwerp in the northern part of Belgium. But this abbey finds its origins in the secularisation that occurred in France from the late 1800s. The monks moved to the Netherlands and received the land for the monastery as a gift from Anna Catharina von Dongen, and the monastery was then built by some monks from Koningshoven La Trappe in 1899, and the chapel was inaugurated of May 1900, at which time there were 12 monks. The name Mary Refuge was chosen so that the French Trappists could actually stay there, otherwise they would have been evicted and I guess sent back to France. But 9 years later the monks had to leave because of the trouble at another monastery in Tilburg, and they found shelter in the Westmalle Abbey. So the Mary Refuge seemed doomed, but it was then saved by Maria Ullens de Schutten, who financed a new building for them, and in 1934 they installed their first abbot, which was Nevardus Mosse. He was succeeded by Alphonsus Lemming and then by Emmanuel Schurmans. Over the later stages of the 20th century they introduced Dutch as their working language, I guess you could say, and they began the practice of Zen meditation. In the 1990s they took in many young monks to ensure the survival of the monastery, and they stopped their intensive dairy farming that was how they made their living in 1998, and they moved to producing organic products. Between 2001 and 2007, under Abbot Vero Fagel, there was major renovation of the building, and there's now a guest house and a gatehouse at the abbey as well. And since 2007 the monastery has been under the leadership of Abbot Daniel Hombergen, and they started brewing beer, I believe, like 2011, 2010, 2011, something like this, and they were officially licensed in 2013 by the International Trappist Association, making them, I believe at the time, the 10th or 11th brewery to enter the Trappist Brotherhood, I guess, if you can call it that. So yeah, an interesting brewery this one. It's interesting to see that there's more and more of these Trappist breweries kind of popping up and things. It's interesting that it's obviously quite a lucrative market, because the whole idea behind a Trappist monastery, if you like, is they first and foremost, you know, they cover their own living costs, but any profits and things they make are you know, done to give to local charities and stuff like this. So it's quite an honourable thing. I mean, I'm not big on the whole religion and stuff like that, but the Trappist guys do a pretty nice job from what I understand. I really hope that I can go to Belgium again at some point and visit the Westmalles and all of these kind of things. It'd be cool to go up to the Netherlands and take a look at La Trappe and Zundert as well. So definitely a future project for me to do on the channel. I've been meaning to go back to Belgium for a long time. I can't even remember when I was there last time, and I was in the Netherlands back in, what would it have been, 2014 from what I remember. So yeah, I definitely need to get back there and meet up with the Dutch Beer Collective guys, as I said. But yeah, that's all you really need to know about Trappisten Brouwerij de Kievet for the moment, and the Zundert beers. If you want to learn more, of course, you can check out the brewery website in the description below. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram, and of course you can check out the Rate Beer and Untappd pages to learn a little bit about the two different beers that they do, and I guess there'll be good sections, so there are good sections actually for that on the website as well. But yeah, let's get on and actually have a taste of this beer then. So I'll just let you have a little look at the artwork on this one before we open it up. There you can see the symbol of the Zundert brewery, of course, is this little birdie guy here. When I looked at it first, you know, the Nordic in me thought, is that like a Viking longboat or something? But no, it is actually a little bird. But yeah, nicely presented label. This one quite similar to the other one from what I remember, the Zundert 8. There you can see the little top symbol on it. This one, of course, they've actually put the Trappist symbol in an interesting place. The Trappist symbol is on the top here, and usually it's down sort of on the back label. But yeah, you can see there is the Zundert bottle cap on this one, which has the little birdie on it again. But yeah, as I mentioned earlier, this beer is a 10% Abbey Belgian style quadruple, however you want to to term it, and it's coming in at 10% ABV. This one was released on the 22nd of November 2019 through Systembolaget here in Sweden, I believe, as I think it was the 22nd, but yeah, it was one of the small partiers, or Tillfälligt sortiment as it's now known. But yeah, let's get this guy out and we will get on with the tasting then. Hopefully it behaves itself. Yes, it has. The only problem with these kind of Belgian style beers, and in fairness though, the Trappist beers tend to behave themselves, but when you get these sort of Belgian style beers that are, you know, have secondary fermentation in the bottle, they can go a little bit mental. And as you can see, the head on this one, you've just got to pour this very, very slowly and let it settle. But yeah, a lovely looking beer this, and I can tell you something, just from doing this pour slowly, it smells really damn nice. Look at that, almost the perfect pour, even if I do say so myself. So yeah, 330ml bottle, that one, or 33 centilitres, whatever you want to say. But yeah, just look at that. I have to say, this is definitely one of the darker quadruples that I've come across. I mean, if I shine the light through this, it is actually a very, very dark ruby colour. But just, you know, going by appearance, I mean, this one really is very, very, I have to say, this is one of the darkest ones that I've seen actually. So yeah, that's really interesting. But if you shine the light through it, it's got a lovely, very dark, almost red wine type colour, a very, very dark ruby to this one. But to you guys, this will be appearing as a very dark, sort of rosewoody, ebony kind of colour actually on the camera. As you could see, there was a solid finger and a half, maybe 2 fingers actually, of a frothy, I would say that's a kind of light sort of fawny colour, the head there. 1 or 2 big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, and a few little ones heading up towards the bottom of that head there. But you know, overall it looks pretty nice, and if you shine the light through that, this beer is actually relatively clear, but you're not going to see that on the camera just because of how dark this thing is. So yeah, it definitely looks the part of an Abbey quadrupel. So it's just a little bit darker than some of the other ones that I've come across before. But yeah, nothing overly surprising about this beer in terms of its appearance. So let's take a closer look at that aroma and just see how we get on. Oh, right. So yeah, for me, this beer, compared to some of the other quadrupels, the aroma here is actually quite reserved, to be honest with you. Of course, you can pick out a little bit of that typical bready, doughy, yeasty thing that you would expect of a Trappist beer. So you've got a nice little bit of brown bread in there. It's just not as thick as you might get from the likes of the La Trappe quadrupel, which incidentally was the first one that was ever produced. So yeah, that's just an interesting point to make about this beer. I really like how this how the aroma goes together. I mean, it does take a little bit of time to just evolve, but it's definitely a more reserved aroma compared to the other ones. There's a good few undertones of like wood in here. Maybe even a little touch nutty, to be honest with you, but those are very, very reserved. It's mainly a kind of sort of flat brown bready note that you're getting in this one. There is a wee bit of brown sugar, but it comes across as very kind of toasty and things. I would say that in terms of the aroma, this one comes across as nowhere near as sweet as, say, the Westvleteren 12 or the you know, the Rochefort 10 and things like that, or even the La Trappe Quad. It's, you know, it really, this beer is a lot more reserved in its aroma and a lot more kind of bready, well, light and toasty, I guess I would say. So that's an interesting point really to make about this. The aroma of this really is very different actually. Yeah, that's interesting. It really is quite woody, quite bready, and the brown sugars come across as very, very kind of toasty and things. So yeah, that really is an interesting point to make about this beer. This aroma is very, very different actually. So yeah, probably it's the yeast, I would think. You know, they'll be using their own kind of house strain of yeast, so that's probably what's giving it a lot of different things. Belgian style beers, and again we need to be careful with saying Belgium because it's a Dutch beer, but these sort of Trappist style beers, and it is all about the yeast, I think. So yeah, it smells quite nice though. Once your nose adjusts to it and you get used to the brown sugars and things, they do get a little bit sweeter the more you smell it, but really it's quite woody and well toasty actually. On the hoppy side of things, there is a little bit of earthiness to this beer. There's a little touch of a there's a little touch of a kind of like a sort of earthy, just a very light earthy kind of note to it. There's some floral and herbal notes in there as well, and a little bit of grassiness, but I would say the green side of the hops leans more towards that kind of earthy, herbal, slightly floral side of things. So yeah, that's kind of interesting. On the fruity side of things then, there's a little bit of a kind of figgy, juicy note to the beer, some blackcurrant and blackberry notes. Yeah, a little bit of a blackcurranty blackberry sort of thing. And yeah, I mean it's got a little bit of that phenolic quality that you can sometimes get from these very strong, dark, yeasty forward beers, if you should say, rather than saying Belgian beers. But yeah. So yeah, that's a really interesting aroma, this one. Definitely a lot lighter in terms of its yeasty qualities than other Trappist beers that I've come across, but it's got all kind of elements that you would expect for this style. So just take a little bit of time and enjoy the aroma before you get stuck into it. I think this is a really it's a nice smelling beer, but definitely a lot more subtle than the other ones you're going to find in the Trappist quadrupel style, if you like. So yeah, let's have a taste of this one then and see how we get on. This one is the Zundert 10, an Abbey style quadrupel from Trappisten Brouwerij de Kievet in Zundert, just outside of Breda in North Brabant in the Netherlands. Let's get stuck into this one. Slàinte, skål, proost. Yeah, that is pretty nice actually. I mean, this one, it is quite different to the other quadrupels that you're going to come across. It's nowhere near as sweet, to be honest with you. And what does it say on the back of the bottle? It says best before the 1st of August 2022. I'm not sure how long they would recommend aging their beer for. I mean, I can't remember if you age a quadruple, I can't remember if it does get a little bit sweeter and things like that, or if it just kind of thickens up a little bit. But yeah, I was just wondering if maybe this beer is really quite fresh, to be honest with you. But even then, I don't think that, that's not going to make much of a difference to it. I think generally this one just isn't quite as sweet as the others that you're going to get. But it still comes across really pretty nicely actually. It does remind me in some ways of the likes of the Castile Donker, if I'm remembering the name correctly. It reminds me of that. So it's nice, it's interesting, this beer. It's just quite different, it's a little bit different from what I was expecting from the quad, but definitely give it a try for yourself. It's a solid beer. It just, things come out a little bit differently in this one, but this is what you want as a beer reviewer. You want things that are going to make you think a little bit. So let's try and break the flavour of this beer down then. So in the middle of your palate, you can feel that nice kind of bready base, that blankets the middle of your tongue, and it is a sort of brown bready quality, and it's got a little element of bread crust to it, but it's not kind of a toasty, charred bread crust, if you like. It's just like the kind of typical edge of like a hedgehog roll or something like that. It's a lovely little bit of brown bread. That's what's forming the kind of backbone, the base of this beer, if you like. And yeah, the further that you go into the aftertaste with this one, I would say that you do get a little bit more sweetness out of it. You do get some kind of more sweet, caramelly notes to this beer. You can feel them almost just evolving out of the palate, and it's odd actually, because if you go to the back corners and then in a little bit and then move in from the sides, you do get a bit of brown sugar sweetness coming out of the beer there. But if you go to the front corners of the palate and move in a little bit, you'll start to notice some woody undertones pushing their way out. And if you go to the very centre of your tongue and then move forward a little bit, you're going to get a little touch of a kind of nutty character to this one. And the very centre of your palate is quite interesting as well. That's where the majority of these brown sugary notes are coming out of this beer. Yeah. This one is, the brown sugars they come across as very dark, and I mean there's a few ways you can do that in a brew. Either you boil it a little bit longer and the sugars caramelise a little bit more, and going by the colour of this beer, and colour is dependent on the time that you boil and also the types of malts that you use. I think it could be a combination. I wouldn't be surprised if they do a bit of a longer boil on this one to make the sugars caramelise a little bit more. So yeah, the sugars for me come across as quite... They're just darker. They're not sort of treacly and molassesy, to be honest. They just come across as a bit more kind of toasty, if that makes sense. The brown sugars in this are nowhere near as sweet as the likes of the Rochefort 10 or the Westfletchen 12 or the La Trappe Quad. This one, the brown sugars, the sweeter notes come out in a different way. They come out a little bit earlier in the flavour, but the sweetness, this is more of a smooth, bready quadruple, if you like, rather than being very focused on the brown sugar. So this one takes a completely different approach, I think, to the other ones that are out there on the market. But yeah, you get the sweetness, the sweeter side of this beer. It comes out in the front. It comes out in the first part of the flavour. Like when you take it in, that's when you get the sweeter, more caramelly side of the beer. And in fairness, you do get, the more you drink of it, you will get a little bit of that kind of sweeter side of it lingering on the middle of your palate. But really, the brown sugars are quite toasty and dark and things like that. So yeah, this beer, I would say this really reminds me of like the Castile Donker a little bit. It's really interesting to find a Trappist beer that just takes quite a different approach to how it does things. But it has everything you'd expect. The way it just comes out though is a little bit different actually, and I would say that the yeasty qualities in this one are not quite as thick as you're going to find from some of the other quads as well. And this one, it feels a little bit lighter and cleaner almost, if you like. So yeah, on the hoppy side of things then, back corners of the palate you've got a little bit of an earthy quality there. As you move further forward it becomes a little bit more herbal almost, and then as you reach the front corners of your palate you've got a little bit of a floral aromaticity to the beer. Then round the front curve of the tongue it's a little bit lighter and more grassy. I mean, the Belgian hops, as I've told you before, Belgian hops, I'm guessing that's what they've used in here. I don't know if they produce their own hops in the Netherlands right enough. I know they do malt and things, but I don't know about hops. But when it comes to the sort of hops from that region, if you like, from the Low Countries, they tend to be a little bit in between the English hops, which are more earthy and herbal, and the German hops, which are a bit kind of smoother and grassy and floral, if you like. They're a bit in the middle, and you can feel that in the centre of your palate there. So I wouldn't be surprised if it is Belgian or maybe even Dutch hops that they're using in this beer. As I always say, behind the front curve of the tongue as well, that's where you get that nice oily bubble where the fruity esters start to push their way out of the beer. And this one, again, is quite interesting in that regard. So yeah, when you take this beer in, it's got a little bit of a raisiny sharpness in the beginning. And as you go to the very back of that oily bubble, you can feel there's almost a kind of cakey, fruit cakey type quality to this beer as well. And the fruits in this one do come across as a little bit phenolic, you know, like cough syrup kind of thing. So yeah, you get a little bit of that. There is a little bit of that datey, kind of pruny, medicinal type quality to the beer. But like I say, it starts off a little bit more sharp and raisiny. Then you start to get these kind of cakey, pruny, datey type qualities to the beer, and as you come a little bit further forward on that front part of your tongue, you get a little bit of a more, there's not really figs in this one, I don't think. It more leans towards like a blackcurrant, blackberry kind of thing out of this beer. I'd be very curious to know actually what hops they've used in this. I mean, it could be Bramling's Cross, or maybe even Northern Brewer from Germany. Both of those two hops are very good. The Germans use Northern Brewer quite a lot in Doppelbock and things like that, and the English use Bramling's Cross in their barley wines and stuff like this. So I think it could be either or both, right enough. I think those are the two most likely varieties you're going to find in this. But as it stands as a quadruple, this one is really nice. The thing that sets this one apart is that it is a little bit lighter in terms of the yeasty qualities, and it feels a little bit cleaner and less oily and things like that. So on that note, it's probably good to talk about the mouthfeel of this one now. So I would say that this beer, yeah, it is still a full-bodied beer, but I think it's at the bottom end of full-bodied. There is just something about this that feels a little bit lighter and less oily compared to some of the other ones. Carbonation, as you always get with these Belgian style beers. Again, I need to watch about saying that when it's a Dutch beer, but the carbonation in this one is quite active, not overly so, but just to a nice kind of degree. It does give you a little bit of crispness to it, and you know, maybe I'd be interested that maybe if you took the carbonation down on this a little bit, it would feel that little bit more oily. I'm not sure. But yeah, overall I'd say the mouthfeel, this one, it does have a good bit of an oily character to it. At the same time, it's quite smooth, and there is some degree of crispness to this as well, which is interesting. A bit dangerous for a 10% beer to be as crisp as that, you know, drinkability and things. But in terms of the hoppy side of the beer, there is a little bit of bitterness to this one. I think you're only talking about 20 IBUs or something though. The malt base is really smooth. You've got a good degree of kind of sweetness to it, a little bit of toastiness to the brown sugars as well, like I was saying. And you've got some lovely fruity juicy notes too. I mean, it starts off a little bit kind of sharp, but then it just, not sour or anything like that, but it starts off a little bit sharper, and it just kind of rolls out to be nice and wet and fruity actually. So yeah, a really interesting take on the quadruple style, this one. If you like the Castile Donker, I think this is a beer that you are going to enjoy. I can't really think of any other ones to compare it to right enough, but definitely a bit lighter than the West Leitrim 12, the quad from La Trappe, and the Rochefort 10 and things like that. It is a little bit different actually, but still a very, very nice beer. So thumbs up to Trappisten Brouwerij de Kievet for this. They've pulled off a nice beer. I'd love to see how these guys would do a triple actually. I think that would be a thing. Maybe they can introduce a 9 and make that a triple. I think that would be a good next step for these guys. So we need to see how they would do with that, but hopefully I can review more beers from these guys in the future. But definitely cool to review the newest one in their range, and I hope that you guys have enjoyed my take on it as well. A little bit of a longer review this one, but cool to reflect on this beer a little bit too. But thank you again for watching my beer reviews. As always, let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know which is your favourite out of the Trappist breweries, and from the Zundert beers of course. And like I say, hopefully we can return to these guys at some point in the near future. Make sure you check out the 4 Dutch beer tubers at the Dutch Beer Collective, and I will catch you guys very, very soon. This one is the Zundert 10, a really interesting take on the quadruple from Trappisten Brouwerij de Kievet in Zundert, Noord-Brabant in the Netherlands. Until the next time, slàinte just now, and I'll catch you guys later. Slàinte, skål, proost, make sure you check out this beer. Cheers.